You will never believe how one moment destroyed him, and then became the moment that would change everything. Picture this: a college auditorium, high ceilings, fluorescent lights buzzing. A young black man steps up in front of his peers and professors, his hands trembling, sweat beading at his temples, as he clicks into the first slide of what was supposed to be the most important presentation of his life. And instead, he sets the stage for the most humbling, igniting, unbelievable journey he is about to take. In that moment, the world around him breezes past so fast that everything freezes: the expectant faces of classmates, the skeptical frown of his thesis advisor, the dull clack of keyboards, until laughter erupts. Derisive, mocking laughter. Not polite, academic chuckles. Real, unmistakable laughter. That first grotesque echo ricocheted through Noah Johnson's mind, like he'd stepped onto a bridge and suddenly everything underneath him began to break. That laugh was Caleb's, a senior with a booming voice who liked to run his mouth. The laughter bounced off the walls and latched itself to every nerve in Noah's body, crushing him, draining the blood from his face. Heat rose up his neck. He swallowed. He wanted to disappear. But that laugh, that moment, was just the beginning of a storm that would almost destroy him before it delivered him. Because you see, this isn't just a story about humiliation. It's not even just a story about redemption. It's a journey about innovation born out of rejection, about how being laughed at doesn't mean you're wrong, it can mean you're ahead. About how that same moment of mockery, that savage backlash, can fuel you in ways applause never could. And by the end, investors will beg to throw millions at him. But not until he, Noah, takes his broken dreams, scrapes them together, and turns them into something indestructible. It was October 4th, Monday morning at Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio. Noah was a junior, double majoring in computer science and environmental engineering, with an idea no one could understand yet, least of all himself. He had spent all night tweaking his slides. Prototype schematics, flowcharts, predictive data, half of which still confused him on good days. He practiced in front of his bathroom mirror until his voice cracked. He paced his tiny apartment until his roommate told him to take a walk. And he rehearsed until he believed speeches were the answer to everything broken in a man's heart. But when he stood before the class, under those flickering lights, his confidence evaporated the second he heard that one laugh. He could feel the air shift, pencil tips tapping behind his back, students looking around to see if it was a joke, other laughter catching like wildfire in a furnace. A joke being made at his expense. His throat felt like it was stuffed with sand. His hands shook so hard that the clicker slipped and the overhead screen flicked into the wrong slide. Someone behind him hissed, "Get it together, genius." Caleb laughed again, and the room joined him. That moment, seated at his desk later, he wished this kind of pain was enough to kill your dreams. But dreams don't die like that, they stand up again, ugly and raw, propped up on sticky notes and sheer will. That afternoon he cowered in the bathroom, staring at his reflection, chin quivering, telling himself he had to quit. But he didn't. Later that night, soaked in cold shower water, he forced himself to read his project notes. A sustainable AI-powered water filtration system for low-income communities. It was bold, ambitious, and half-crazed, but it was real. And something in him whispered, they laughed because they didn't get it, because it was too early. And then it clicked, like static settling. He would start from scratch. Tear it down. Build it again. But better. The next morning he showed up to the engineering lab an hour early. He pulled out his smartphone and a trash can full of old presentations. He uploaded his work to a cloud drive, connected to a 3D printer, coded till his fingers bled, tested sensors, tweaked parameters, tweaked them again. The other students wandered in, curious. They asked. He explained. He let their confusion fuel him. He worked until the lab lights flickered off and the building closed. Then he walked home in the late midnight air, heart pounding, head swimming with possibilities. He didn't sleep, not because he gave in to obsession, but because he refused to let that laugh define him. And isn't that worth everything? That isn't just perseverance, that's choosing to defy your own destruction. Weeks passed like wild storms. He sourced spare parts from thrift stores, asked his one engineering professor for advice, paid for lab time with leftover scholarship money. He stayed off social media, told people he was fine, but behind closed doors he was simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. Because in those moments of fevered creation he stumbled on something unexpected. An algorithm, Not just any algorithm but one that could predict contaminant behavior in polluted water faster than any model on record, using about 1/10 the computing power. That was the breakthrough. That was the spark that made it more than just a student project. That was the moment that reminded him of his grandmother back in Atlanta who used to say, "If they laugh at you, you're the candle, not the moth." He'd never understood what she meant until now. He was the candle, and now his flame was growing. He tested the algorithm using a miniature filtration unit he built out of old PVC pipes and charcoal filters. He poured pond water, collected data, tweaked flow rate, reran code, collected more data, and then saw it. The output far exceeded anything he'd expected. It purified nearly 90% of contaminants in under 2 minutes. That's what good looks like, if you can see good when everyone laughs first. He wrapped it all up in new slides late into the night, clear, concise, bold. He drafted a brand new presentation for the next showcase. No trembling voice. No alcohol dwells. This time he was going to walk onto that stage and own every fucking second of it. The day of the university's annual Innovation Expo arrived. That's where he planned to show the world he wasn't a joke. The gymnasium was packed. Investors, faculty, industry reps, students elbowing for free notebooks. Posters of projects lined the walls. Some cute, some ambitious, some so polished they looked like they hired actual pros to do them. His booth was in the corner, simple. A tabletop with his mini filter, a laptop screen looping data visualizations, and a banner that said, "Smart Flow, AI Sustainable Water Filtration." He arrived early again. His hands didn't shake this time, only because he refused to notice them. The crowd flowed. People smiled. Kids asked questions. A professor from the environmental science department nodded, impressed. Then an angel investor approached, not because he knew who Noah was but because somebody whispered, "That kid across the room?" He almost cracked the code for real-time predictive filtration. He watched the demo, eyes going wide. He asked questions, smart ones. How does your algorithm scale? What's your material cost per unit? How many sensors? He answered confidently. He showed him test data. He walked the investor through updated schematic after schematic. The investor jotted into a notebook, maybe wanting to invest, maybe just polite, Noah didn't know yet. During a lull, Caleb strolled by, muscle t-shirt, self-assured grin. He stopped, looked at the setup, raised an eyebrow, then laughed, quietly, but absolutely heard. Noah felt the blood, but didn't step away. He stared. Caleb shrugged and walked on. That one laugh was softer, but sharper like a blade. Somewhere in that crowd, though, a venture capitalist and another investor were watching, with interest. Then the association president came by. She shook Noah's hand, bemused, still had doubts, but asked, "So what's your plan for pilot testing?" Noah laid it out. Partner with local NGOs, deploy filters to underserved neighborhoods in Dayton, gather real-world data, iterate, and license the tech to municipal water systems. She raised her eyebrows and smiled, then stepped away. And on the other side of the booth, a reporter from a regional tech magazine clicked her pen thoughtfully. By the end of the expo, Noah was drained, but not broken. He packed up slowly. The investor who'd asked so many questions stopped him. "Meet me in the cafeteria," he said quietly. 5 minutes. Noah's heart raced. 5 minutes. If that didn't go well, maybe he'd still be a joke. But if it went right, something honest could finally happen. He walked over. The cafeteria was less crowded, more hushed. The investor, a lean man with steel-rimmed glasses, poured coffee and nodded at an empty chair. "Sit," he said. Noah did. "How fast can you scale this?" the investor asked softly. Noah leaned forward. He went through it again. Estimates, costs, adoption plans, regulatory hurdles, and as he spoke, the laugh from months ago turned into fuel beneath his feet. By the time he finished, the investor stared at him. "You've got drive," he said, "and I think we could help you build this. Off the record, I think universities shouldn't be running projects like this alone. I think private capital should pour in. What if I was interested in backing you?" Noah felt dizzy. He nodded before he could think. Yes. When Noah left that cafeteria meeting, nerves vibrated through his body like static. The expo had been a turning point, but everything after depended on what happened next. Did that investor mean it? Did his excitement fade when he looked at Noah the next morning? Was the funding real, or just a casual comment tossed off? Days later, Noah checked his email. One unread subject line scrolled across. Smart Flow Follow-Up. His breath caught. He clicked and saw the words, "Let's talk terms." Then his phone buzzed. Another message. From an unknown number. "Glad you're onto something." He looked around, hard out of breath, and for a second felt like he was still standing on that broken bridge. Only now the planks were being replaced around him. The future was approaching. But was it safe? Or was this just another kind of illusion waiting to crash? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. The words on the screen, "Let's talk terms," felt like a door swinging open, but Noah knew better than to rush through it without caution. His hands shook as he replied, fingers hovering over the keyboard before he typed back, "Thank you. When can we meet?" The reply was almost instant. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Downtown office." The room around him blurred for a second, the weight of what was happening settling like a slow-burning fire. This was it. The moment where a dream could either rise or shatter. And Noah, who'd been laughed at not even 2 months ago, was stepping into a world he barely understood. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly. Noah arrived at the towering glass building in downtown Dayton, the weight of his backpack feeling heavier than ever. He checked his reflection in the lobby mirror, adjusted his tie, and walked through the revolving doors. Inside, the sterile marble floors echoed beneath his footsteps as he approached the elevator, nerves tightening in his chest. When the doors slid open on the 23rd floor, a sleek reception area greeted him, minimalist and cold, with a receptionist who barely glanced up. He was led into a conference room where the investor from the expo was waiting, this time with 2 others. Sharp suits, sharper eyes, the kind of people who measured every word you said and every micro-expression on your face. They didn't waste time. "Mr. Johnson," the lead investor began, voice smooth but authoritative, "we've reviewed your project extensively. The technology is promising, but the market is complicated. Scaling a filtration system for underserved communities isn't easy or cheap. What are your projections for cost per unit at scale? And how do you plan to navigate regulatory hurdles?" Noah took a breath and began to lay out his vision again, this time with numbers and timelines, showing the months of research that had crystallized into something tangible. He spoke of partnerships with NGOs, pilot programs, the scalability of his AI algorithm that made everything more efficient. The investors leaned in, eyes narrowing, nodding slowly as he spoke. He felt their skepticism morph into intrigue. For a moment he saw respect flicker in their gaze. Then the questions got harder. What about intellectual property? Who owns the data your algorithm generates? What protections do you have against competitors? Another investor's voice was colder. Have you considered how larger corporations might respond if you disrupt the market? This isn't just tech. This is a fight against entrenched interests. Noah's pulse quickened. He realized this wasn't just about science or innovation, it was about politics, power, and survival. But he didn't flinch. "We've filed provisional patents and have ongoing discussions with legal experts. I understand this will be a battle, but the mission is too important to back down." The investors exchanged looks, then the lead smiled, a slow, deliberate smile. "That's why we're interested. Not just because of the tech but because of your grit." The meeting ended with promises to draft a term sheet, and Noah walked out feeling both exhilarated and exhausted. But the road ahead wasn't going to be smooth. On his way home he noticed a black SUV trailing him, windows tinted, no plates. It stayed close enough to be unnerving. His phone buzzed again, another cryptic message, "You're shaking things up. Be careful who you trust." He swallowed hard. This was bigger than he imagined. Back in his apartment, the glow of his laptop screen illuminated emails from well-meaning supporters and curious media outlets. Requests for interviews poured in. Suddenly, Noah was the story everyone wanted to hear, the underdog with a breakthrough. But among the praise there were threats, anonymous calls warning him to stop. The laughter in the auditorium felt like a distant echo now, replaced by whispers of danger and excitement. Despite everything, Noah kept pushing. He spent nights coding new features, refining prototypes, and preparing for a demo at a regional tech conference. The stakes were higher now. This was where he'd prove to the world that laughter wasn't his enemy, it was fuel. The day of the conference arrived. The hall buzzed with energy, startups pitching, investors mingling, journalists snapping photos. Noah's booth was simple but commanding, a sleek filtration prototype, interactive screen showing live data, and a banner that read, "Smart Flow, Clean Water for All." As attendees gathered, he demonstrated the system's power, answered questions with growing confidence, and even received a standing ovation from a group of environmental advocates. But then, just as he was about to wrap up, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Security rushed past and someone shouted, "There's been a data breach. Someone's hacked the conference network." Phones buzzed with alerts and the large screen behind Noah flickered and went dark. Whispers turned into panic. Noah's heart dropped. His project files, his demo data, everything was stored on the network. Had his work been compromised? Before he could react, his phone rang. An unknown number flashed on the screen. He answered, voice steady despite the chaos. A distorted voice whispered, "You're in deeper than you think. Walk away now, or this will be the last conference you ever attend." Then the line went dead. Noah stood frozen, surrounded by confusion and fear. The laughter from the past, the threats of the present, it was all closing in. But he clenched his fists. This was his moment to choose, back down or push forward. And as the emergency lights flickered and the crowd hurried out, a cold realization hit him. Someone wanted to stop him, and they had just made their first move. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. Noah's mind raced as the conference hall emptied faster than he could process what had just happened. The data breach wasn't just an accident, it was an attack, a deliberate strike meant to cripple his progress. His SmartFlow system, months of sweat and sacrifice, now vulnerable in a blink. Security personnel hurried past, directing attendees out into the chilly afternoon, their radios crackling with urgency. Noah clutched his phone tightly, replaying the ominous message in his head, "Walk away now, or this will be the last conference you ever attend." Who could be behind this? And why? Back in his rented apartment, the atmosphere shifted from cautious optimism to full-blown paranoia. Noah shut all windows, pulled the blinds, and triple-checked every device for signs of intrusion. His laptop, the core of his work, hummed quietly, but the memory of that breach haunted him. He pulled up logs, scanning for anomalies, unauthorized access, strange IP addresses, masked VPNs. Someone was watching. Someone was hunting. But Noah wasn't about to fold. If anything, the attack ignited a fire deep inside. He reached out to trusted contacts, his one professor, and even a local cybersecurity expert, a woman named Jasmine, known for her no-nonsense approach and a past in government cyber defense. They dug in together, piecing clues from server logs and tracing digital footprints that led down dark, winding paths. What they uncovered wasn't just a hacker, it was a coordinated effort. Someone with resources, connections, and a clear motive to bury SmartFlow before it could rise. As days blurred, the news cycle picked up. Articles praising Noah's innovation intertwined with warnings about the breach. The story took on a life of its own. Supporters rallied online, crowdfunding started, but so did the hate, vicious messages, threats, anonymous calls in the dead of night. And worst of all, his closest allies began to distance themselves, scared by the heat Noah was now under. Then came the anonymous package, a plain brown box left on his doorstep with no return address. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "This is bigger than you think. Don't trust the investors." Heart pounding, Noah plugged it into a secured laptop Jasmine had set up. The files revealed internal emails between some of his supposed investors and executives from a massive water corporation. They discussed sabotaging SmartFlow's launch to protect their monopoly. The plan was cold, calculated, and ruthless. Noah felt the walls closing in. The very people who had smiled at him, who had seemed to believe in his dream, were plotting against him. But now, armed with this evidence, he knew he had a choice: expose them and risk everything, or stay silent and watch his dream die. In the middle of this storm, a surprising ally emerged, a former executive from that corporation, disillusioned and ready to blow the whistle. They arranged a secret meeting late one evening in a dimly lit cafe. The executive handed Noah a dossier filled with documents and recordings proving the sabotage plans. "They're scared because you're a threat," the executive whispered. "You have the power to change everything." Noah left the cafe with his mind swirling, hope mixed with fear. He was no longer just fighting for a filtration system. He was fighting a giant. But then came the call that shook him to his core. Jasmine's voice trembled over the phone. "Noah, your apartment's been broken into. Nothing's missing, but someone's been here." That night, unable to sleep, Noah stared out his window, the city lights flickering like distant stars. Somewhere out there, enemies lurked, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. And right when he thought he could finally take a breath, his phone lit up with a message that froze his blood. "Stop digging or you'll disappear like the others." Noah's hands tightened around the phone. He was deeper than ever, trapped in a game he never wanted to play. But retreat wasn't an option. Not now. Not ever. What lengths will Noah go to expose the truth? Who are the others mentioned in the chilling message? And how far will his enemies go to stop him? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. Noah's world was shrinking fast. The warning, "Stop digging or you'll disappear like the others," echoed in his mind like a death sentence. Who were the others? People who tried to expose this shadowy conspiracy before him? Disappeared without a trace? The weight of it crushed his breath, but it also steeled his resolve. Fear had no place here. Not when everything was on the line. That night he met with Jasmine again. She was pale but determined, her eyes scanning lines of code on her laptop like a battlefield map. "We're dealing with people who play dirty, government ties, corporate spies, maybe even worse," she said. "If they want you gone, it won't be just words. You have to be smart." Noah nodded. Every step forward now was a dance on razor's edge. Together they began to secure everything. Encrypted communication, burner phones, backup drives hidden in safe places. Noah stopped going home alone. Friends rallied, offering places to stay, but he could feel eyes watching him everywhere. Every shadow held a threat. Then came the unexpected. The media attention skyrocketed. Stories about his breakthrough, about corporate sabotage, even some whispers about his safety started making headlines. Public support surged, and with it, pressure on the corporations. Suddenly, Noah wasn't alone anymore. The tide was shifting. But with light comes darkness. One evening, as Noah returned from a meeting with a major NGO partner ready to pilot his filtration system, he found his car's tires slashed. A note tucked under the windshield wiper read simply, "Last warning." No sirens, no police tape, just silence and menace. The message was clear: back off or face worse. Instead of retreating, Noah doubled down. He arranged a live-streamed panel with environmental experts, investors, and advocates, exposing the sabotage documents and sharing his vision for SmartFlow. Millions watched as he spoke, not as the nervous student laughed at months ago, but as a leader challenging the status quo. Comments flooded in, support rallied, and even some politicians took notice. But victory was far from certain. That night, as Noah reviewed plans for scaling SmartFlow, his phone buzzed again. This time, the message came with a photo. A picture of his younger sister, smiling on her college campus. Below it, chilling words, "We can reach you through them." The threat was no longer just about Noah. It was about everyone he loved. His heart pounded. Protecting his family became his new mission. He called his sister, told her to stay safe, but the fear in her voice mirrored his own. There was no turning back now. The enemy was closing in. Then, just as Noah was preparing to reveal his next move to Jasmine and his closest allies, his phone rang. No caller ID, no warning. He answered. A calm, cold voice whispered on the other end, "You think you're winning, but you don't know the half of it. If you want to save them, you'll disappear on your own terms. Or we'll make the choice for you." The line went dead. Noah dropped the phone, the weight of those words crushing him. He was caught in a trap with no clear way out. What will Noah do next? Will he vanish to protect those he loves, or fight the darkest forces trying to silence him? And just who is the shadowy figure behind these threats? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. The chilling words on the phone echoed relentlessly in Noah's mind: "Disappear on your own terms or we'll make the choice for you." He sat alone in the dim glow of his apartment, heart pounding, mind racing. Every option seemed like a trap. Every move weighed with consequences not just for him, but for his family, his dreams, and the future he was fighting to build. But Noah wasn't a man to bow to fear. He was a man who had been laughed at, dismissed, threatened, and yet here he stood, unbroken. He called Jasmine. "We need a plan," he said quietly. "One last stand." Together they devised a bold strategy. a public expose that would force the hand of powerful interests and bring undeniable proof of the corporate sabotage to the world stage. They reached out to trusted journalists, whistleblowers, and advocacy groups, preparing for a press conference that would shatter the silence and expose the truth once and for all. The day arrived. Cameras flashed as Noah stepped onto the stage in front of a packed auditorium, live-streamed to millions. He laid out the story, from the humiliating laughs at his first presentation to the threats, the hacking, and the shadowy forces trying to bury SmartFlow. He shared the documents, the emails, the recordings, and the faces of those who sought to silence him. His voice was steady, filled with the kind of strength born from surviving storms. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Public outrage exploded, powerful politicians called for investigations, and the corporations found themselves under scrutiny like never before. Support flooded in from communities desperate for change, from environmental activists to everyday people inspired by Noah's courage. But even as the walls closed in on his enemies, Noah knew the fight wasn't over. His family was still vulnerable, and the road ahead would be long and difficult. Yet, standing in that spotlight with millions watching and believing, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Months passed. Lawsuits were filed. Reforms pushed forward. SmartFlow secured funding, partnerships, and began rolling out to communities that needed it most. Noah's name became synonymous not just with innovation, but with resilience and justice. And one quiet evening, as Noah walked through a neighborhood where his filtration systems were already making a difference, a little girl smiled up at him. "Thank you," she said simply. "You saved our water." Noah smiled back, the tears he had held back for so long finally flowing freely. This was why he endured, the reason he refused to be silenced. Because sometimes the greatest victories come not from avoiding the storm, but from learning how to dance in the rain. Noah's journey teaches us that resilience in the face of adversity can transform ridicule into respect, and threats into triumphs. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward despite it. When you stand for what's right even against overwhelming odds, you can inspire change that reaches far beyond yourself. And sometimes the laughter of the crowd is just the first step on the path to greatness. The end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths.